Give us a brief state of Informs from your viewpoint in terms of its major activities right now.
INFORMS is a fantastic organization that is serving its membership and the goals of both the membership and the organization, smarter decisions for a better world. And that's really what it's about. It's about helping make decisions better. And some people do that through math or computer science or management techniques or analytics or artificial intelligence. But all of that is really about making better decisions to improve the world that we live in and for the future. Informs also has a great set of products and services that it produces and delivers both to Informs members and to the broader community of stakeholders that Informs is interacting with and serving in its goal, smarter decisions for a better world.
Your predecessors have written about Inform's finances and the current operating deficit due to the pandemic years. So how will Informs continue its financial recovery and growth during your presidency year?
I see that lots of professional organizations are struggling with this. This has occurred partly because of the pandemic, the rise in inflation costs, the associated changes in meeting attendance and other things, but also because not as many people have been engaging with their professional organizations as might have been true 20 years ago. So all of the professional organizations are working through this. Informs, as I mentioned, has this great structure and bones where there's a diversified financial portfolio, but it is something that the board of directors, elected officers, staff, and others throughout the organization continue to work on to make sure that we're financially stable, both in the short term and for the much longer term. Along with that, we can look for opportunities where the organization can meet the changing needs of members and of society as our use of publications changes, or the way in which we network and connect with other members and part of the broader system may change with technology. So Informs also needs to make sure that we're adapting to those and looking ahead.
So we're now moving into COVID-19 endemic stages, but I wanted to ask about how the pandemic affected you personally and professionally. As a healthcare and humanitarian researcher, you've collaborated with the CDC, American Red Cross, many other organizations. You've also co-founded and co-directed the Center for Health and Humanitarian Systems, which is one of the first interdisciplinary research centers at Georgia Tech. So it's a lot of big stuff, big names there. It seemed also like the COVID-19 pandemic sort of thrust you into the media spotlight as an expert in epidemiology and healthcare supply chains. So what was this like for you?
There's a lot to unpack in that question. Let me take a couple of pieces of it. Let me talk about the media advocacy and communication piece of it first, because that's a pretty tangible one. I had been working on pandemics for more than 15 years and been looking at supply chains. And so that did bring it all came together in 2020 and following. I had been in the media prior to 2020, but not as regularly or across so many different topics and different channels. I really enjoyed it and found that as someone working in this space around smarter decisions for a better world, that this was another forum in ways that you could both take what you're doing, whether it's in your research or your practice, and help translate that for the public, or potentially start to shift the decision making a little bit of this broad set of decision makers that are operating in many different capacities in that pandemic. I also came to think of my engagement with the media as being a bit like education, but now my audience is different. My audience is journalists, and journalists are educated in their fields, but they may not necessarily be working in a domain area where they've built up years of expertise, depending on what their background is. And so you're helping them learn about this pandemic and supply chain when it's changing dynamically as different things are occurring. They, in turn, are helping the public learn about it and think about the decisions and think about the things that we're not talking about yet that we should be talking about. And that's a really exciting opportunity to help impact the discussion and decision making. I encourage all INFORMS members to think about if there are ways that they can meaningfully engage with the public through media, through citizen science, through things that they write, or other kinds of ways, if that is of value to them. So that's the first part of your question about what did it mean for me personally related to the media engagement. More generally, I think that the pandemic, which is, of course, a terrible tragedy among many other tragedies that we've had, but it is one that enabled some decision makers to see INFORMS and INFORMS membership as a resource for decision makers. And that is really important. And there are lots of different players in this very interdisciplinary space around pandemics and supply chains. You've got medical doctors and epidemiologists and journalists and viral scientists, virology scientists, and all kinds of other participants. INFORMS with a focus on decision making and a focus on understanding systems and uncertainty and limited resources and all of these kinds of things played a valuable role in the pandemic and supply chain. And I hope that it's one of the many things that the INFORMS organization is doing to bring visibility to the overall discipline and the work that the discipline does.
Sort of a silver lining there from the pandemic, right?
An unfortunate, yes, situation, but there are some silver linings in terms of what we can learn from that and move forward.
Coming into your presidency year, what do you see as INFORM's greatest strength?
Of course, the members, but one of my favorite things about INFORMS are all of the communities. And the communities are made up both of the overall organization as well as subdivisions and groups and social networks within the organization. And I think that that is one of the most important things that INFORMS does, is that they build that community and allow those communities to flourish. Those communities happen through things like the subdivisions and sections and societies and chapters. They also happen at events like in meetings, and even virtually during the pandemic, and certainly continued to some extent some of the groups within INFORMS. So for those who are newer to INFORMS, or even those who have been around for a while, I strongly encourage people to find a community where they can have discussions and learn and grow and network and share what they're doing, all of these different things, because I think that those communities are really important to individuals personally and professionally.
Sometimes, especially as new members, INFORMS can seem very intimidating. It's a big organization.
It can be, new members and new attendees of the conference, they should go to a business section, they should go to a reception and find ways to interact with people in areas that may be directly related to what they do, but also maybe in an area that's unrelated, so you can learn about something new.
So you noted in your candidate statement that, quote, the pandemic has hastened adoption of automation, ubiquitous data collection has led to algorithms governing society, and the earth itself may be irrevocably altered. So what does that mean for today? Question here.
And I'm chuckling because, of course, in the last months, a lot of attention has been focused around artificial intelligence. What is that? What does it mean? What does it mean for the current status quo? And what does it mean for the future? And this is one example of where we've had some, really exciting advances in algorithms, and particularly recently around language and in language prediction and use, and then also in image generation. These two alone have enormous implications. It has huge implications for employees and people in the workforce across a wide variety of different sectors and in the way that we work. And INFORMS members and stakeholders have important roles to play in that as organizations start to restructure. INFORMS members themselves may need to retool and learn new skills, as we all do over time in our career. And some parts of this are also connected with the work that Informs members do directly in building the algorithms and building the technology and thinking about how these are rolled out across a system where these decisions have cascading effects across many different stakeholders. We are already seeing some of the potential negative effects that are associated. And those, people who work with algorithms know about these, but they're really are far reaching when you don't know when algorithms might be playing a role, what kind of data they're using as they are learning about that system, what kinds of objectives they might have. And so when they are used for human resource decisions, healthcare decisions, even transportation decisions, it's important that we really have thought carefully about the data that's going into them, about the transparency and how they're used, and about their interactions across that entire system, including the humans that are involved in it. So I think that we're just at the tip of what we're seeing in terms of changes to the world that are going to be brought about by automation and computers and all of that. So for the workplace and society, we're going to see lots of changes in the coming years. As decision makers, Informs will also need to think about how much of this space that the public calls artificial intelligence is part of our organization and what we're going to do in connecting with the other parts of it that might not be the direct work that our members are interacting with on a daily basis. So I think that that will continue to be both a challenge and an opportunity as we navigate the space of what is the ORMS analytics area and how is it the same or different in artificial intelligence. And then the other part of my statement that I don't want to forget is the part about irrevocable changes potentially to the earth. And so, again, in the last year, I think that there's been greater attention to the changes that we're seeing in the climate and what those and the impacts on the environment and the earth and what that might mean both for individuals and for organizations, companies and communities and cities. And while most Informs members are not direct experts in environmental life cycle, let's say, we do have a role to play in that space of smarter decisions for a better world, where we are connecting that science and technology around environment and climate and science and technology about how humans make decisions and the information that they're receiving and put that together as we're thinking about that overall system.
Lots of interesting stuff there. You've already said several times Inform's new tagline during our little chat. So, how does smarter decisions for a better world resonate with you?
Well, I do really like this new tagline. I'm still getting used to the rolling of the words off my tongue to be a little bit faster, and so pardon me as I work through that. But I think that it captures part of what is so important about the wide set of methodologies and practice areas in which our members work. We work in lots of different areas, but what unites the majority of it is really focused around decision making. And, that doesn't mean that every single member is thinking about decisions with everything that they do, but it really is all leading towards how we can use math, computers, psychology, and all of these other foundational sciences together focused on decision making. I also like that the tagline focuses on a better world. And a better world means lots of different things. It can mean that companies need to be more efficient. It can mean that a health system might need to be more effective. It might mean that some of the things in the public impact space might focus on equity or accessibility, and that we might incorporate the experience of humans within those different systems in which we're operating and the technology that they're using. So I love that it captures our impact both on organizations but also on society as a whole. So I really am excited about the tagline. It won't be the solution to everything that we have, with visibility and making sure that our disciplines are known and understood, but I do think that it resonates with a lot of people.
You're really using it well. You're it's seamlessly rolling off the tongue. So, how about any new goals or in the works INFORMS initiatives that are going on behind the scenes that maybe you can share with the membership?
I think it's important that the membership understand what the organization is doing and what elected officers are doing to move it forward, both things that are currently happening as well as potential changes on the horizon. So, to call attention to some of those current ones, the tagline is an important effort that it continues over multiple years. There's the collection of information and the focus groups and the generation of ideas and the more focus groups and feedback, and then eventually a tagline that rolls out, and that does take multiple years. We've also had important initiatives in advocacy, in diversity, in improving the member experience, in continuing to update data and technology to serve the needs of the organization. And those are all great, and those will remain in place. One of the areas we're seeing opportunity and where I see opportunity to do better is in retention of members. So right now we have perhaps 1/3 of people come to the annual conference in the fall and don't become INFORMS members for the long term or don't necessarily return to future events. So I think that there's some market there that we could serve in a way that would benefit both those prospective members as well as the organization as a whole as we're moving towards this smarter decisions for a better world. One group within that is likely early career professionals, not only from the fall INFORMS event, but also from the spring event, and really throughout the organization and the entities in the organization where we're graduating students, of course, all over the country and the world across many different programs. We've also seen expansion of these types of programs over time from the roots of the organization in operations research and management science through to large initiatives in analytics and data science. And of course, now recent advances in artificial intelligence. So we need to be thinking about how we can really serve a broad set of members, but beginning with those that have maybe interacted with us at least once and need to keep coming back so that, and making sure that we're serving those needs. One of the other things where I'd like to encourage the organization to continue moving forward is finding ways to be appropriately agile and adaptable. And these are words that we regularly use when talking about the best supply chains. Agile, to be able to sense changes and respond to those. Adaptable, being able to perhaps serve different markets, for example. There might be different groups of customers, our members who need different things. And then to add to that, alignment. It's really difficult when you have this fantastic organization, but it's large and there are a lot of things that are decentralized. So, are there ways that we can communicate and interact across the organization that helps us be more aligned in our mission of smarter decisions for a better world? So, that's a big, long answer, but the short of it is focusing on members and serving the members that passed through the organization. And that includes early career, both in research faculty, professionals working in a variety of different practice organizations, and improving the membership experience by helping the organization adapt to change.
I hope you have lots of ideas for us on how we can align and be agile and all those things.
Ultimately, it's not about my ideas. It's about helping the organization have the right structures and have decision makers throughout the entire enterprise where they are elected officers in a subdivision or volunteers for a journal or on the committee of a conference, and help them understand where INFORMS is going and how they also can contribute to it.
You've earned several INFORMS awards, including the Volunteer Service Award, as well as the National Science Foundation Career Award. You've also been named a Fellow of INFORMS, American Institute for Medical and Biological Engineering, and an Institute of Industrial and Systems Engineers. What have these bestowments meant to you in your career?
Awards are this funny thing. On the one hand, they don't matter. What matters more is what impact you're having with your work in whatever setting it is that you've chosen. But on the other hand, awards can be meaningful both to an individual and for the profession. There's some professions that really have done a good job at recognizing people in the profession, and I think it helps to create visibility. And when you look at our profession and discipline in comparison to some of the others, I think that we probably have not given out as many awards. Awards is an area where I think that Informs and its related subdivisions and other parts of the organization can continue to improve and look for ways to recognize our members, recognize them for the work that they're doing. I don't mean just give out a trophy to everyone because everyone should get a trophy, but rather have ways to recognize people at different levels in their career. So they don't have to wait until they've accumulated enough things to be considered for a fellow, that there are things everywhere along that pathway. And I think that that's another place where Informs as an organization can serve both these people who may have passed through our doors, but also early career professionals as they see a pathway to different kinds of things that can be meaningful both for them and for their organization as it starts to help highlight the work that those members and others are doing to promote smarter decisions for a better world. So I am honored that I have been considered, and I'm appreciative of those who have put me up. I'm really more interested in thinking about how we can make sure we have lots of different ways to recognize Informs members and its organizations across the whole spectrum.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself. What drew you to OR and management science in the first place? How did you get to where you are today?
I will say it was a meandering path for me, and I'm not sure that that's entirely unusual. Not a lot of, let's say, 15-year-olds are waking up saying, "Oh, I want to go be a future member of Informs. Maybe we'll get there one day." Until then, people find their way to it. And for me, I was interested in doing something where I could positively impact the world. I had some skills and interest in using mathematics and computing rather than some of the more physically oriented sciences. And it was attractive to me that humans were also part of these systems. So I found the area through trial and error, but through a job opportunity. I think it does point to the opportunity that is Informs members and the organization that we have to continue raising the visibility of our field and to help people understand earlier and earlier about the field so that they can consider a career in that space. That may start with people who are in graduate school and lots of different kinds of degrees. And as they're graduating and joining their careers, and, are we telling them and encouraging them to be members in Informs? It may go further back to making sure that we're doing outreach at the college level and even the high school level. We are seeing some summer camps around the country now where the use of the techniques from OR, MS analytics, and the broader set of methodologies are being brought to high schoolers to inspire them earlier and earlier. So I found my way to Informs along a discovery path, and I hope that we can continue to improve that so that that path is shortened for future Informs members.
I actually think today is National STEM Day, or maybe it was yesterday, but an appropriate conversation for National.
That's a great way. And, we should all be ambassadors of the brand in that sense, and our students should be ambassadors of the brand.
Can you talk about mentors or any others who played significant role in your education or early career and how important that is?
Thank you for bringing up mentoring, because mentoring is another area where there are some Informs initiatives. And I do think that mentoring is an important desire within our professional space, and it's one where the Informs organization can also help. As I talk to members and think about what it is they want from Informs and what it is they want from professional organizations generally, connecting is certainly part of that. Learning is part of that. Growing and invisibility, both for them in their field and their organizations. Mentoring is an important part of multiple elements there. I've been fortunate to have had people who have reached out to me at different stages in my career, from my college years to later as a faculty or as an academic leader, and they have offered help. Sometimes it was just as a sounding board as you're trying to work through something, and other times they may help shape you a little bit. So I remember a conversation with a professor. I went to a leadership event in college, And the professor sat me down afterwards. He wasn't in my discipline at all, but he said, I think you should think about working in the space related to policy. And that had never occurred to me before. But that conversation eventually resulted in some of my work directions that have ended up related to public health and pandemics and other kinds of things, because he encouraged me that I too, as someone who came from an engineering background, could interact with this other part of society where maybe we don't think about every day as a connection point. That's one example upon, among many where there have been mentors who've had both short-term interactions or engagements with me or longer ongoing ones where, there's been real value and it's really shaped my perspective in my work. So I would encourage people to think about both sides of it, to think about where they might be able to offer assistance or an ear, if an ear is needed, to someone else, and then also where they can receive that and where they can get feedback. And you need it the entire career. It doesn't go away at some point when you've reached some level.
We do have the INFORMS Mentor Match program. I know it's undergoing some changes currently, but hopefully those who are looking for a mentor would like to mentor others can look.
That's right. I do hope that you'll put links to that opportunity if the video is posted. And then I would also encourage belonging to communities within INFORMS, because that's another way to identify potential mentoring relationships.
As we've mentioned, membership is essential to the health and growth of INFORMS. And you noted in your candidate statement that you would listen to members and engage in a period of listening that is intentional and structured, hearing voices from throughout INFORMS on aspirations and opportunities for the organization. So could you elaborate on what this period of listening would be and what you hope to achieve from it?
Thank you. And I think that we should all, focus on understanding the world around us. And in this case, I'm trying to understand not just the organization, but also the interaction that members have with it and during their time within it. And there are lots of different ways that this listening is occurring. So some of it is by consuming data that comes from focus groups where INFORMS staff and external partners have sat down with groups of people, some of which occurred before I was in this role, some of which has occurred more recently, and really consuming all of that information with these individual comments about what people appreciated or where there might be opportunities for improvement or what they wanted for the future. I have also been reaching out to different groups and making connections there. So for example, I've had some discussions with some early career professionals and would like to continue doing that. When I go to a conference or an event, I will often pick something that I haven't been to before and go to that environment and try to listen to what's occurring and see what I can learn from that. So at the most recent annual conference, I went to the Analytics Society meeting, for example. And at the spring conference, I went to the Early Career Practitioners Network and spoke with people there. I'd also like to speak with and listen to, really, not speak with, but listen to some of the different groups that are performing some of the governance actions and really thinking strategically about decisions that we make, whether that is the subdivisions council that interacts with chapters and sections, or whether it's editors of journals and their editorial board, or the meetings committee. There are lots of different groups around INFORMS that are thinking deeply about different areas. And then the other thing that I'm trying to do is to help make connections among these different parts of the organization. Like any large organization, you can have the situation where all of the things related to publications are over here and all of the things related to meetings are over here. But are there opportunities across each of these different functional areas where there can be connections, which might occur through the elected officers? It might occur through sometimes having liaisons, but just making sure that we are maximizes the opportunity to think about the system as a whole. And, and I certainly invite people to contact me. I say that knowing that that could, in theory, lead to thousands of emails. Hopefully it won't, because none of us would be able to respond to thousands of emails. But I am listening, and I do look at the feedback from the conference and these focus groups and all kinds of other different places. So make sure to share your feedback in these different channels and with elected officers in your community and others throughout the governance structure.
INFORMS Connect Open Forum is also a great place for members to go and just ask questions or try to, use Connect to reach any other member or you even if they don't know where to
Thank you
find you.
for that. Thank you for the reminder about INFORMS Connect. I recently changed my INFORMS Connect email preferences because I found that the way that I was getting that information wasn't really working for my workflow. So I encourage people to look at INFORMS Connect and choose what works best for them, given what kind of information they want to have and the frequency and all of that.
I pick the daily one. I get one. I don't do the, real time, but I get a daily email from every community because working on the magazines, I want to know what every community is up
Yeah.
to. And
Yeah, I was getting it that way, but to be honest, I found it overwhelming because I belong to lots of communities on purpose, but I don't have time to consume all of those emails every day. So now I've moved to a more weekly format for most of those, where there might be some more immediate things that I need to see on a daily basis, so you can make that choice.
so, what compelled you to become an INFORMS member when you started?
It's a great question. I'm not sure that I have a wonderful response to it. What I can say is that I was a graduate student. I was in, at the time, a master's PhD program. My advisor encouraged me to go to Informs and have an opportunity to present at some point. The first time I attended, it was not as a presenter. And many other people from my university were also going to Informs. And as I moved to my next stage of career as a faculty member, many people in my organization were also attending Informs, and that became a network and a community that was really important to the future path that I had. So, those experiences as a student, I think, are critical to our member base for the future, both in ensuring that students can potentially have a good experience, but also that they do find a community or a home within Informs that can help serve their needs as they move beyond being a student to that next stage of their career. And so that's where this adaptability of the organization and making sure that we have different things that can serve people with different interests. As an academic, I might be focused around publishing journal articles, but if I were in a different organization or in a different kind of role, maybe I wouldn't be as motivated by that. Maybe I would be motivated about learning the newest cutting edge techniques or getting ideas from how other folks in industry or government are implementing something. So, these are all part of that Informs broader mission of smarter decisions for a better world. But I do think that this student link is an important one that we could look at closely.
I guess the better question would be what kept you renewing your membership year after year, and why did you?
Well, I got value from the organization. I got value from coming to the conference. I got value from building a community of peers and not just peers, but people, at different ranks and levels. And not just the annual meeting. I've been to the meeting in the spring. I've been to section and subdivision meetings of several different types over the years. I've participated in other ways that are not around the conference. But you build a network of people that have some kind of similarity or common interests. And then, there are other services, you may be learning something new or looking for visibility in an area or interested in advocating and taking decisions to that next level. So, at the end of the day, Informs met some of those needs. We are in a changing time where the role of the internet is different now than it was perhaps when I first joined, which is going to date me. We did have email back then, we did have the web, but people are using the internet in ways that we weren't using when I first joined. But I do still believe that Informs has valuable things that it can do in bringing people together, both virtually and in person, and through some of these common services and products. We've talked about several meetings, publications. There's also certification, and I'm sure there's a host of other products and services that I haven't mentioned yet.
We'll send everyone to the member benefits page.
Perfect. Perfect.
So, what do you like to do for fun? Tell us about your hobbies or what typical weekend looks like.
I do have a family, so that's an important part. During the pandemic, we did some traveling, but mostly traveling, driving, and going to national parks. For example, we've been to mountains, we've been to beaches, we've been to caves. Hiking in nature is probably not my very first thing that I would do all of the time, but as a family and with these different experiences and as part of these national parks, that's been something I've really enjoyed and continue to enjoy. I also have other hobbies. I read and listen to books, and I have craft hobbies, and I have activities, physical activities that I enjoy that bring exercise and fun. I particularly also like going to the beaches here, both in North Carolina and beyond. And now that the pandemic is in a new phase, I have begun to travel some more. And whenever I travel, I like to explore that city, that environment, that food, that culture. And so that's been something from the last year that I've been able to do more of that I wasn't able to before. I'll give one example of a physical activity. For a long time, I've been involved in social partner dancing. So things like swing dancing and salsa dancing and ballroom. And it turns out that there are several other INFORMS members who have interests in this area. So at a recent meeting of a society in the summer, we joined as a group and went out and found partner social dancing in the local town. So that's a great example of a hobby that I have that some others at INFORMS have, and that we also connected as we attended a meeting and interacted with the broader community.
Tell us if there's one particular area or initiative that you really want to move the dial on during 2024. What do you have one major focus?
You're going to limit me to one. And one thing that I'd like to emphasize is that coming in as president shouldn't be about I have an initiative that I'm going to push, and then at the end of the time I walk away, because then that could send the organization in lots of different directions as you have new officers come in the door. So I don't want to frame it in that way. On the other hand, I think that when you come into the role and you're engaging with the board and the officers and the membership and the staff, there are times when you see opportunities where you can help move the organization forward. So one of those, it relates to members. So making sure that we are providing services for the broad set of diverse members that we have. And diversity here means lots of different things, not just someone's gender, race, ethnicity, age, but also the subdiscipline in which they work, the type of employment, their focus within that type of employment, whether it be towards research or more practice-oriented consulting, technology, all of these different components and probably more that I didn't mention. So are we serving our membership base across these different aspects that are important? And especially within that, I think that there are opportunities to do a better job of serving our early career professionals. In early career professionals, there are lots of different types of early career professionals. And so we may not go out with one big initiative that's going to solve everyone's problem, because I don't think that that's really going to meet the needs. So we may try to meet the needs of different groups within that early career practitioner while moving forward as an organization in that space. And again, not just me, across the entire space. So I think that there are opportunities to think about how to do that, while also making sure to preserve or improve the experience of our existing members, because we certainly don't want to walk away from this strong base of dedicated, continuous members over time. Simultaneously, we do need to be thinking about revenue streams and revenue and cost, and making sure that the organization is sustainable for the longer term while meeting the needs as they're changing in society. So to give examples of this, we've seen a lot of changes in the way that publications have been working across all disciplines, with greater use of open access, for example. What is INFORMS doing in that space, and where do we see it going over the next 5 years? Are there opportunities to improve the experiences at the annual meeting? And this is so hard because people have all kinds of different opinions. If you say, oh, well, I liked blue, the other person says, no, I liked green. And so, you can't please everyone simultaneously. But can we find ways to make sure that we're serving that fundamental mission that we're doing as a professional organization, but also in our mission of smarter decisions for a better world? So if you limit me to one, I'm going to say membership and focusing on expanding and improving the membership experience. Probably most people don't know that the membership numbers have been largely flat for 20 years, even as we've seen an increase in demand for people in the professions of OR, MS, analytics, all of these areas, and the growth of educational programs. Our membership has essentially been flat. And so I think that points to the fact that we're not serving all of the members right now where we could be doing.
Last question. What is your vision for INFORMS and the profession in the next 5 or 10 years? Or what are your hopes for INFORMS down the line?
I think that INFORMS is a premier professional organization, particularly fitting in the space of decision making. Certainly with respect to the areas ORMS analytics, but I think broadly it really is about decision making and about one INFORM. I really want INFORMS to be an excellent organization that has gained in its visibility and gained in the impact that it's having as an organization and through the work of the members. To ensure that broad impact of the organization and the members, I think it may be helpful to grow some and serve some of the potential members that interact with the organization, but then don't necessarily become the long-term members. And I think that there are opportunities to continue working on advocacy, for example, and communicating our mission to the broader public in lots of different ways so that more people know what INFORMS is, what it does, and what work the membership base is doing. So I think that over a 5 to 10 year time period, I'd like to see that visibility and impact of INFORMS grow and adapt as needed to changes in society and the profession.
Thank you so much for taking your time to talk to me today. I'm really looking forward to 2024 and your year as president of INFORMS.
Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it.